Hello and welcome to the meeting of the Paso Robles City Council for Tuesday, June the 7th. Mayor Steve Martin speaking. I'll read this before we get started. City has returned to hybrid public meetings pursuant to AB 361, which allows for a deviation from the teleconference rules required by the Ralph M. Brown Act. Residents now have the option to attend the meeting in person or to participate remotely. To participate remotely, residents can listen to the meeting live on the radio at 12:30 a.m. or live stream the meeting at www.prcity.com/YouTube. You may call 805-865-7276 to provide public comment via phone. Phone line will open just prior to the start of the meeting and remain open throughout the meeting to ensure the opportunity to comment on each item heard by the council. Written public comments can be submitted via email to cityclerk@prcity.com prior to 12 noon on the day of the council meeting to be posted as an addendum to the agenda. If submitting written comments in advance of the meeting, please note the agenda item by number or name. City Council meetings will be live streamed during the meeting, also available to play later on YouTube by accessing the following link, www.prcity.com/YouTube. With that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Gregory. Not present. Councilmember Hammond. Also not present. Councilmember Strong.
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Here. We have 3 of 5 council members present. We expect the other 2 shortly. With that, we're going to move forward with our agenda. The first item being a closed session meeting of the Paso Robles City Council, and I'll ask the city attorney to announce what items will be discussed during that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to be going into closed session on one item. It is a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. It's regarding a 5.6 acre portion of property of APN 008-254-002, commonly known as Pioneer Park. The negotiating parties are Ty Lewis, the city manager, and the negotiating party for the other side would be the state of California, acting by and through the State Public Works Board with the consent of the Department of Food and Agriculture, acting by and through the 16th District Agricultural Association, and we will be discussing price and terms of payment.
Thank you. There's no one present in the council chambers at the moment to give public comment. Do we have anyone online who would like to speak on the closed session item?
No, sir.
Very good. We'll close public comment, and with no objection, we will recess to closed session. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the regular council meeting for the Paso Robles City Council for Tuesday, June the 7th. Before we get started, I'd like to read the following. City has returned to hybrid public meetings pursuant to AB 361, which allows for a deviation from the teleconference rules required by the Ralph M. Brown Act. Residents now have the option to attend the meeting in person or to participate remotely. To participate remotely, residents can listen to the meeting live on the radio at 12:30 a.m. or live stream the meeting at www.prcity.com/YouTube and call 805-865-7276 to provide public comment via phone. The phone line will open just prior to the start of the meeting and remain open throughout the meeting to ensure the opportunity to comment on each item heard by the City Council. Written comments can be submitted via email to cityclerk@prcity.com prior to 12 noon on the day of the council meeting to be posted as an addendum to the agenda. If submitting written comments in advance of the meeting, please note the agenda item by number or name. City Council meetings will be live streamed during the meeting and also available to play later on YouTube by accessing the following link, www.prcity.com/YouTube. And with that, I will call the meeting to order and invite all who are able to rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilman Strong. Please remain standing for the invocation by Pastor Sheehan.
With me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we ask your blessings upon Mayor Martin, councilpersons Gregory, Hammond, Garcia, and Strong. Fill them with knowledge and wisdom for every decision before them tonight. And Father, bless our law enforcement and emergency services personnel who bravely protect and serve. And bless our city staff with the grace they need to manage and care for our city. And Father, we thank you for your many blessings upon Paso Robles, and we ask this in the precious name of your Son. Amen.
May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Hammond. Here. Councilmember Strong.
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Here. All council members are present. We'd like to take a few minutes at each city council meeting to introduce staff members, also members of city advisory committees and commissions that might be in attendance. So as we go around the room, if you fit that bill, we invite you to stand, identify yourself and your affiliation so we can see who does the work of the city. Starting on my right, please.
Warren Frace, Community Development Director.
Melissa Boyer, City Clerk, joined by Shauna Howenstein, Civic Engagement Coordinator, and Karen Jackson, IT Technician.
Paul Sloan, Economic Development Manager.
Didas Esperanza, Capital Projects Engineer. Analyst. Rita Berman,
Chris Hugh, Assistant. Brian Brownell, Administrative Services Director. David Dorff. David Davis, Smith. Matt Thompson, Police Department. Police Support.
Thank you. Anyone online? Very good. The first order of business is to let you know that prior to the open meeting of the Paso Robles City Council, we had an announced closed session meeting this evening, and I'll turn it over to the city attorney to give us any reportable action from that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We went into closed session on one item, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8 to discuss a property located, a portion of a property located at APN 008-254-002, commonly known as Pioneer Park, and there was no reportable action.
Thank you very much. Move on now to presentations. Our first presentation tonight is for Juneteenth, and is Juanetta Perkins with us. Come on forward. So you're going to be receiving the proclamation. Would you like to tell folks your association with the Juneteenth celebration?
I'm one of the committee members for the Paso Juneteenth originators that we started last year.
So this is a proclamation declaring Saturday, June 18th as Juneteenth Day in the city of Paso Robles. Whereas since 1865, the American celebration known as Juneteenth has historically been observed as the end of the institution of slavery in our great nation. Whereas Juneteenth embodies the indomitable human spirit of the past, the present, and all time. Whereas the celebration of Juneteenth gives us all the opportunity to rededicate ourselves to the true American spirit and to strive for a more perfect union. Whereas we are citizens who wish to secure the blessings of freedom, justice, and equality for all in this great country. And whereas the collaboration of community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, local businesses, and local government demonstrates a shared commitment to being part of the solution and acknowledging the importance of strength through unity. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Stephen W. Martin, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor and speaking on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim June 18th, 2022 as Juneteenth Day and recommend that all citizens of the City of Paso Robles join in recognizing the importance of this day. And this is for you.
I would like to thank the City of Paso Robles for the support. I'm born and raised in Paso Robles, and if there wasn't any time for healing, I think that this Jubilee or celebration will help Paso get back to where we are, where we should be.
Thank you. Next, we have a proclamation for amateur radios. Scott Curry. There he is. Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here tonight?
Sure. I'm a member of the Paso Robles Amateur Radio Club and representing the amateur radio community here in Paso Robles and the North County and San Luis Obispo. Amateur radio operators are, we communicate via radio. We're experimenters, hobbyists, but we also have a very serious side to our hobby, and that's emergency communications during times of disaster or other communications emergencies. And so we've asked the mayor here to make this proclamation regarding Amateur Radio Week.
Thank you, and I'm very pleased to do that. As a former radio person, I appreciate all that. So. Amateur Radio Week, June 19th to the 26th. Whereas amateur radio operators are celebrating over a century of the miracle of the human voice broadcast over the airwaves. And whereas amateur radio has continued to provide a bridge between peoples, societies, and countries by creating friendships and the sharing of ideas. Whereas amateur radio operators have also provided countless hours of uncompensated community services, both in emergencies and to other local organizations throughout these decades. Whereas the state also recognizes the services that the amateur radio's people provide to our many emergency response organizations, including police, fire, and emergency management. Whereas these same individuals have further demonstrated their value in public assistance by providing free radio communications for local parades, bike-a-thons, walk-a-thons, fairs, and other charitable public events. Whereas the City of Paso Robles, California recognizes and appreciates the diligence of these hams who also serves as weather spotters in the Skywarn program of the U.S. Government Weather Service. And whereas the American Radio Relay League is the leading organization for amateur radio in the USA, and whereas the AARL Amateur Radio Field Day exercise will take place on June 25th through the 26th, and is a 24-hour emergency preparedness exercise and demonstration of the radio amateur's skills and readiness to provide self-supporting communications without further infrastructure being required. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Stephen W. Martin, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor, speaking on behalf of the entire Paso Robles City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of June 19th through the 26th as Amateur Radio Week in the city of Paso Robles. And thank you and all of your compatriots for all your services over the years.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm honored to accept this. And just like to say that one of the points brought out in the proclamation was that on the 25th and 26th, we will have our annual field day exercise, which is an emergency preparedness exercise. It's a contest too. We have fun as well. And members of council, the mayor, our first responder representatives, you're all invited to stop by and see what we do there. And it'll be at the Templeton High School practice field. Thank you.
Moving on, our next order of business is our emergency notification systems update. Mr. Stornett.
Good evening, Mayor Martin, members of the council. I think that was a perfect leadway as we talk about Amateur Radio Week, because we're going to discuss today the emergency notification systems and just the critical role that especially the amateur radio they play in it is during the earthquake. We lost all cellular phone capabilities. We had communication problems and landlines were down. So definitely they played an impact in our role there, and it could very well happen again today. But I want to let the public just know how they can be prepared during a disaster to receive critical information should we need to get it out to them. So there's about 5 different ways that they can receive this information, and 5 different ways that myself, Chief Nord, Mr. Lewis, our city manager, or any of the local officials on our city council can get that information out to the public. And the first one is called the EAS, so the Emergency Alert System. And this is what you hear come up on your TV or come up on your radio, and it always happens when you're watching your good TV show, and it happens the first of each Thursday. So you can stay tuned to your local radio channels or your TV if there's an emergency in your vicinity or in your community to find out critical information. Another way that you can receive critical information is the wireless emergency alerts, also known as the WEA. So this is on your cell phones, and usually this occurs in the middle of the night when you're sleeping really well, and it's an unknown sound that you've never heard before, and it makes you jump right out of bed. But the WEA alert for many years just went out a mile radius, and so we would utilize this for fires that we would have here in the community, as well as law enforcement activities. And essentially we would draw a grid and it would activate all cell phones within that area within a mile. But then the Paradise Fire happened and there was a large evacuation required, and they found that the signal didn't go out far enough. So it was changed to 10 miles. And, some complications do come with that. If we have an actual emergency in Paso Robles, a Atascadero may receive it on their WEA alert as well, but we'd rather be reaching too many people than not enough people. So this can be activated by us calling the sheriff's office, giving them the details of the emergency and the information we want to go out. The National Weather Service can utilize it, as well as the CHP utilizes it for Amber Alerts. For everyone online or in the public here, this does have to be activated on your phone. So all you do is go to settings, then the notifications, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and it'll see government alerts. And we ask that you please turn it on. The other one is reverse 911. So again, we have used this before as well during our river fire that we had a couple years ago. We can actually draw a map of who we want to be engaged in the reverse 911. So for example, let's say the fire was on the west side, we would say Vine Street to Pine Street, and we could say, or Vine to Spring, and we could say from 10th to 24th Street. So it draws that grid and it calls your phone, or it can call your cell phone. And you can sign up by just typing into your web browser, Slow Sheriff Reverse 911, or you can just go to our Paso Robles Fire Department homepage, and there are steps there to get you signed up for Reverse 911. And we encourage all residents of the community to sign up for Reverse 911. Free of charge. And then another platform, this is one that we're currently working on and we're building right now. It's called Zone Haven. So what this allows us to do is we can actually draw right on the back of our squad cars or our battalion chief vehicles, is we can draw grids, and it'll actually send the alerts via the phone, and it'll tell you, hey, you need to evacuate. We can also put in there the evacuation center you should go to. We can also do traffic control points. So as we draw that grid, it'll say, okay, in this area, there's 200 residences and there's 1,000, or 200 houses and there's 1,000 residences. So then we can start thinking about, okay, we want to send this many residents down this route, and this many residents down this route, so there's not a traffic jam. We can also do fire modeling. So as the fire's going, we can take the wind, we can take the humidity, we can take all these factors, and we can determine how fast is this fire moving and how far ahead do we have to plan these evacuations. So this is currently in process. We're building the zones right now. I anticipate this to be effective hopefully by July of next year. We're really pressing for the first of the year, but we'll see if we can get through with everything. And then the last one is what they call routing alert. And really what this is all communication systems have failed and you're relying on the fire engine PA system or the police PA system and these emergency alerts to evacuate, shelter in place, and things like that. And then we want to encourage all residents to make sure you're prepared for an emergency should one occur. So make sure you have a plan, have an emergency kit, and make sure you're informed. You can get all the information of how to be prepared during a disaster by just going to the City of Paso Robles website, clicking on the fire department homepage, and there's lots of information there of how you can build your disaster preparedness plan and make sure you have a communication plan with your family members. And then also there's, as we have in the city, we have policy and we have a number of response plans in our emergency operations center. So as the EOC is activated, we can refer to those response plans, and we have evacuations as just one of the about 11 plans that we have in there. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you. This is an information report. There's no action required. Any questions of staff from council? No. Anyone in the room who would like to ask a question? Anyone online?
No, sir.
Very good. Thank you very much for the information, Chief. And we certainly underscore his recommendations that citizens familiarize themselves with the ways they can be notified in the event of an emergency and get themselves prepared for that day. You know, as we all know, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So we move on now to our general public comments. This is the time the public may address the council on items within the council's purview but not scheduled on the agenda. If you would please begin by stating your name and address. Each person is limited to 3 minutes. Any person or subject requiring more than 3 minutes may be scheduled for a future council meeting or referred to committee or staff. Those persons wishing to speak on any item scheduled on the agenda will be given an opportunity to do so at the time that item is being considered. And we should have speaker ID cards in the back of the room. It would be a big help if you could fill that out and bring it up to staff before you speak. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Dale Gustin, 945 Spring Street. I have a question of the council. Since this council has dissolved the parking commission, I'm at a loss to understand how you're going to get input from the public on their feelings and desires regarding downtown parking.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak? General public comment. I see no one online waiting to speak. We'll close general public comment, bring it back to the council. The question that was asked is how we will ascertain input on parking now that we've done away with the parking commission. The staff is always available for input from both private citizens and from businesses downtown. All the city council members have their contact information published on the city website. I can assure you there is no hesitancy on the part of many to contact me on this and other issues. And people will be able to express themselves that way or during public comment during our city council meetings. So there will be ample opportunity to express yourselves regarding parking or any other issue coming before the city. I'll ask city manager now if we have any items to be deferred tonight.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We move on to consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine, not requiring separate discussion. However, if discussion is wanted by a member of the council or public, that item may be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Council members and members of the public may offer comments or ask questions of clarification without removing an item from the calendar. Individual items are approved by the vote that approves the consent calendar unless an item is pulled for separate consideration. Items pulled from consent are generally heard at the end of the meeting. And this is one of the reasons that I emphasize that if you just have a brief question or you'll make a comment about a consent calendar item, you can do that without pulling it, because then we don't all have to wait here until the end of the evening to talk about that item. So with that, I will ask council members if there are any questions or items to be pulled. I'll go to the public. Are there any questions or items to be pulled regarding the consent calendar? Yes, sir.
Dale Gustin, 945 Spring Street. As to the number 14 about authorization for with PG&E, I'm a little bit puzzled. I thought the city of Paso Robles opted to a different company than PG&E for the electric service. I'm confused.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the consent calendar? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm George Dugas. I live at 1808 Bella Vista Court here in Paso. And it concerns the special assessment on landscaping and lighting in my
Special
little area.
assessments is not part of the consent calendar. That'll be discussed separately.
So that's an item that's
Oh,
on the
I
agenda.
thought I could make a comment. No, I'm
You will
sorry.
be able to when we get to that item, but that's not part of the consent calendar.
Okay.
Okay? Any other comments on the consent calendar? Anyone online?
No, sir.
Okay, we're going to close that, bring it back to the council. I will ask first for an answer on that question regarding PG&E. Mr. City Manager, you want to address that?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. And if it needs further expansion, I believe Ms. Berman can help too. Yes, the city is contracting with PG&E. They provide the transmission lines and the services to actually get power to any of the structures. I believe that what the question refers to is the sourcing of clean energy versus alternative energy, but that's a different matter. Trying to get the actual transmission lines to the property is a PG&E
Right. So the third-party option for local citizens for power generation does not have anything to do with the infrastructure or delivery of that power. PG&E is actually the company that handles the power lines, the towers, et cetera. So that's what this agreement refers to. So I would entertain a motion. Mr. Gregory.
I move we approve the consent agenda items 4 through 18.
Second. Motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Strong. If there's no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia? Aye. Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We move on to public hearings. Item number 19 is a public hearing for military equipment use ordinance pursuant to AB 481.
Mr. Mayor, did you want me to review for the
Thank
public?
you for reminding me. Yeah, it's general practice, and I jumped the ship there. We'd like to have the city manager do a short report on the consent calendar so that people listening in will know exactly what we voted on. So if you would, please. Thank you.
Sounds good. There's a number of items, some of them which we've talked about a little bit so far, but we have item number 4, which is the approval of the city council minutes from 4/19. We also have city council minutes from 5/17, a receipt of our warrant register, receipt of advisory body minutes, approval of an agreement with Wildan Financial Services to prepare our 5-year economic development strategic plan, approval of an engineering services for recycled water distribution system in the across the Salinas River, approval of allocation of Senate Bill 1 funds for fiscal year 2022-2023, approval of award of construction agreement with Souza Construction for pedestrian improvements at Black Oak Drive. We also have approval of a lateral police officer hiring incentive program for the police department. Approval of construction contract with J.J. Fisher Construction for annual sidewalk repairs for 2022. As mentioned earlier, we have approval of the payment to PG&E for electrical infrastructure for fire station number 3. Approval of award of a contract for architecture and engineering design for New City Corporation Yard to Omni Design Incorporated, as well as approval of award of construction agreements for zones 5C and 5F, which are the Melody neighborhood and Appaloosa neighborhoods for pavement rehabilitation. And then we have a contract to Wallace Group for design services for new airport road sewage lift station. That's in preparation of our improvements out near the airport. And last but not least is the receipt of the monthly investment portfolio for January, February, and March of 2022. And that are all the items on the consent calendar.
Thank you for that report. I'd like to remind everybody here and those listening in that this is a long list of actions that were taken with one vote. If you want to know the details of any of these things, these are all included at the Paso Robles City website. You can go to agendas and minutes. You'll see the agenda for tonight's meeting, and all of these reports are linked. So if you want to see the background on any one of these reports, you could. So we try to make sure that people are as informed as they want to be. Now we move on to public hearings. Item number 19, which is the public hearing for military equipment use ordinance pursuant to AB 481. Commander Davis.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having us tonight. Tonight, I'm just here to request approval for do a public hearing for the military equipment policy that the police department is requesting to put into place. Governor Gavin Newsom signed Bill 481 into law, which requires law enforcement agencies to obtain approval of an ordinance adopting military equipment policy through the agency's governing body. Paso Robles Police Department possesses and uses this equipment regularly that is regulated by this ordinance. We currently do not have a policy for our military use policy. Military equipment, as defined by this government code, includes many items which we consider industry standard and commonly used that are listed in the ordinance. Therefore, we have listed this. We have adopted that policy, and we're bringing it before you guys tonight to adopt that policy. The police department, the items that are listed in that policy are pretty much standard issue items, such as our everyday rifles, our handguns, our nothing out of the ordinary. That's all listed in our policy. So we're just coming before the council tonight to ask for your approval of that policy. Of course, I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing, and the way we do this is the council gets first shot at asking questions of staff. If there's anything we don't understand about the report or the supporting documents, we can get that clarified. Then we go to the public for their comments. When those comments are finished, we come back to the council for our discussion. So at this time, I'll ask council if there are any questions. Mr. Hammond?
Yes, Caleb. This is something, again, that the city can take advantage of at the state level, or is it a federal level?
This was a state policy put in place, and the policy is really put in place just to have police agencies go before their governing body to explain what items they have in their use. That's all it is. So it's not, we're not obtaining any equipment from this. It's just listing out the equipment that we do use.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other council questions? Mr. Strong.
Yes, this equipment, I imagine, is kept under lock and key and storage unless it's called to specific use. It's not carried around normally, is it?
Yes, sir. Some of it is normal day, everyday use equipment, so it is used every day. Obviously, anything that is of higher priority is obviously kept under lock and key.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other council questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll open for public comment. This is your opportunity. Same rules apply. We invite you to the microphone if you have a comment to make. Seeing no one rise, do we have anyone waiting online?
No, sir.
Very good. I will close public comment, bring it back to the council for action and discussion. Mr. Gregory.
I move we approve item 19 for public hearing I recommend we introduce and read by title only and waive further reading of ordinance number XXX, adopting a military use equipment policy pursuant to AB 481.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilman Gregory, seconded by Councilman Strong. If there's no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. The motion passes 5-0. Item number 20 is a long entitled item. Do I need to read the entire thing? I guess I do. Public hearing for the annual levy of Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District Number 1 and Drainage Maintenance District 2008-1 for fiscal year 2022-23, including tabulating Proposition 218 ballots and, if no majority protest exists, consideration of the corresponding resolution confirming the new assessments proposed for Zone 1, Sub-Area 1, Tract 1581-1, Sub-Area 4, Tract 1619, Sub-Area 6, Tract 1463-1, and Sub-Area 18, Tract 1581-2. Zone 7C, Sub-Area 63, Tract 2351, Zone 11, Sub-Area 76B, Tract 2430, Zone 14, Sub-Area 11, Tract 1723, and standalone Sub-Area 64, PR 01-186, and Sub-Area 88, Tract 2422. Ms. Berman.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Frida Berman, Maintenance Superintendent. Tonight's public hearing considers assessments for fiscal year 22-23 in the Landscape and Lighting District. over 4,100 lots organized into 19 zones and 145 designated subareas spread across the city. Assessments are also being considered for the drainage maintenance district associated with the Ashwood Place subdivision. On April 19th, Council adopted a resolution initiating proceedings to levy assessments in the Landscape and Lighting District and Drainage Maintenance District, and also to levy a proposed new or increased assessment through Proposition 218 balloting in the 9 Landscape and Lighting District subareas you just mentioned that have current maximum assessments that are insufficient to fund maintenance services. Assessments fund that ongoing maintenance of streetlights, hardscapes, detention basins, parkways, median islands, open space, slopes, and other related facilities. In all cases where an increase is proposed, monies will be applied to the operation and maintenance of applicable neighborhood improvements, most significantly increased landscape maintenance contractor costs and water costs. Can you switch the slide, please? Thank you. Of the 3,721 parcels in the Landscape and Lighting District being assessed but not balloted, 60% will be assessed an annual increase of $50 or less. Of those, 39% will be assessed an increase of $10 or less. 20% of assessable parcels will be assessed an increase of between $11 and $50. 21% between $51 and $100 annually. This is all annual assessments. 20% of assessable parcels will be assessed an amount greater than $100 annually. Oops, sorry about that. $402 will be assessed in fiscal year 22-23 to fund the costs of maintaining the drainage maintenance district. Notices and Proposition 218 ballots were mailed to the property owners in the 9 designated subareas being balloted for new or increased assessments. A total of 311 ballots were mailed. Property owners have until the close of this public hearing to submit a signed and marked assessment ballot. At the close of the public hearing, ballots will be opened and tabulated and the results announced when the council is ready to resume this issue later in the meeting. I want to note that property owners in the 9 subareas being balloted were invited to participate in one of 4 meetings held on March 9th and 10th to discuss issues associated with the proposed new assessments and the balloting process. An estimated 35 individuals attend the meetings and had the opportunity to interact directly with city staff and the district engineer. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Stacy Reynolds, district engineer from Wildan Financial, is also here and available to answer questions.
Thank you very much. For the city attorney, this is slightly different from our usual course of business. Can I go ahead and ask council for questions before we proceed? Any council questions regarding the staff report? Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, hi, Frida. Essentially, we're asking these increases because of need, basically.
Correct.
So the different annual funds that we have are getting into the red, or at least not enough to do the maintenance as required. And, it looks like to me that some of the newer tracks are the ones that are probably more expensive than the lower ones. Is that kind of the consistent?
Each sub-area is assessed based on their improvements. So if they have more trees or they have more parkways or they have more maintenance or more water, they're assessed more. We only assess to cover the cost of what we're maintaining.
Not allowed to charge more, but just what it takes to maintain.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Mr. Strong.
Yes, Frida, if for some reason you do have negative ballots that deny the increase, how do we handle the lack of money in that district?
We reduce service.
You refuse to serve it? Okay. So they're just on their own.
Yes, part of being incorporated into the city as a subdivision or a sub-area is that they are responsible for the assessments to maintain the common landscape improvements.
Thank you. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you, Frida. This is the time and place for the public hearing, which will include balloting of certain zones and sub-areas in Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance District 1. The public hearing is hereby officially open. We will now have the opportunity for public testimony, and anyone wishing to speak on these matters should present a speaker card to the city clerk if you've not already done so. And we're ready to take the first speaker if anybody'd like to comment. Yes, sir. This is the time. At the microphone, please.
So again, I'm George Dugas, 1808 Bella Vista Court here in Paso. I've been here since 2004. I belong to Zone 11, Sub-Area 76B. My last tax bill was for this assessment was $850, round numbers. And now it's $12.96, and they're asking for $14.29. In 2015, I was paying $550 for the same service. That's about a 250% increase. Along with the other cost of living increases, it's not attainable. Is there any limit to how high these fees can become? Does anybody know?
We'll get an answer for you on that. Any other questions?
No? Just a comment. There's 9 houses in my sub-area. 7 of them have a grass median. The rest of the neighborhood is river rock. It's time to get rid of the grass and save the water. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? I see no one coming forward. Is there anyone online?
No, sir.
Before I close public testimony, is there anyone else who would like to speak on these matters or turn in a ballot? Seeing none, I now close the public testimony. No further public testimony will be accepted. We'll bring the matter back to the council for any questions. We do have a question, and Frida, if you could speak to the fact that the costs in this district, the sub-area, have increased, obviously substantially. And also the question was, is there any limit to what can be charged?
The maximum assessment is listed there. It's $1429.18. So that assessment, that maximum will stay in place until if and when we ballot again. So, just to be clear though, every year there's CIP, cost, the Consumer Price Index. So we can increase it by that every year, but significant increases beyond that have to be balloted.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hang on just a second. There were no other questions that I heard, so thank you, Frida. I'm going to bring it back to the council here for their questions. Mr. Strong?
Yeah, Frida, don't run away. In that regard, the limit also is the actual cost, is it not? So
That's
it
correct.
doesn't mean they're actually we charge $1429.18 unless that's the actual cost.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make that
They're
clear.
approving a maximum.
So that's a maximum. They can charge less if the cost is less.
But I just want to be clear, though, the reason they're being balloted is their current assessment at $1296.01 doesn't cover the cost of the maintenance.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Hammond?
Frida, doesn't this show up on their property tax bill?
It does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory?
Yeah, so Frida, so last year it was $800, this year it's $1296. What's causing the dramatic increase?
I would have to check the engineer's report about exactly what that sub-area was charged. The previous maximum was $1296.
Right.
But when we decide to reballot, we look at contractor costs and we look at water, but most significantly, we look at operational reserves. If they have no reserves, which these 9 sub-areas don't, then we have to make the decision to reballot or reduce service.
Is it also part of the reason because there's so few houses to
Yeah, that
pay the
is
bill?
part of the reason.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Strong.
That brings another question then. How much reserves are considered legitimate?
50% of the cost to maintain the sub-area.
Okay, so that would be held in reserve against a
Catastrophe.
huge amount some other time.
Right.
Thank you.
Other council questions?
Whenever you're ready.
So the public hearing has been closed, and it's time now to direct the city clerk or the designee to open and tabulate the ballots returned. Upon completion of that ballot tabulation, please present those results to the city council for further action. How long will that take?
It will probably take 5 to 10 minutes at least.
Shall we take a recess then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're going to recess while they tabulate the ballots. It's hard to know.
So if you have to take 5 minutes for me to get back
We'll call the Paso Robles City Council back to order. I assume that the ballots have been tabulated. I'll ask the city clerk to announce the results of the ballot and identify whether a majority protest exists or not.
So the results of the ballot for Zone 1, Sub-Area 1, Tract 1581-1, 61% yes, 39% no. That was a pass. Zone 1, Sub-Area 4, Tract 1619, 27% yes, 73% no. That is a fail. Zone 1, Sub-Area 6, Tract 1463-1, 27% yes, 73% no. That's also a fail. Zone 1, Sub-Area 18, Tract 1581-2, 59% yes, 41% no. That is a pass. Zone 7C, Sub-Area 63, Tract 2351, 29% yes, 71% no. That's a fail. Zone 11, Sub-Area 76B, Tract 2430, 17% yes, 83% no. That's a fail. Zone 14, Sub-Area 11, Tract 1723, 43% yes, 57% no. And that's a fail. Standalone Sub-Area 64, PR 01-186 was 0% yes, 100% no, fail. Standalone Sub-Area 88, Tract 2422, 14% yes, 86% no, fail.
Thank you. So for the city attorney, how does this affect the resolutions that are in front of us? How do we modify that?
Oops, sorry about that. So we just need to look at the resolutions that passed and approve those, unless we get it.
These were all in relation to Resolution E of the item.
So we just need to, let me pull it up, sorry. It was in the script.
Question for Melissa. Melissa, basically, it's sub areas 1 and 18. Then are the only two that passed?
So it's 1 and 18 were the two that passed. So we would, in the resolution, you'll see where there's the yes and the no's. So staff will put that in, and then you'll approve the resolution, but the effect is to only actually implement it in.
So the motion will be for the resolutions to be passed reflecting the ballot.
Yes.
Very good. So we have 5 resolutions in front of us. We'll take 5 separate actions. Mr. Strong?
Which one? This is already affected. One of those 5 resolutions?
The first 2.
No, according to the city attorney, we passed the resolutions, and part of the motion will be to reflect the vote count in the ballot. Everyone. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the resolutions in order.
Each one of these resolutions will reflect the balloting in those sub-areas.
So Resolution E has the actual balloting in it. Sorry, go ahead.
So there's 5 resolutions. 2 of the resolutions reflect the balloting. The other 2 approve the annual assessments on the areas that are not being balloted and also approve the engineer's reports. So you have 5 total resolutions.
Right, so we're taking each resolution individually, and then the ones that have the balloting in it, which is E, and that's what I was trying to figure out is which one was the other one that had the balloting in it. No, it is E and C.
E and C.
Have the balloting in it.
Okay, so are you ready to make motions?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Mayor. I will move that we approve Resolution 22XXXA, amending and or approving the engineer's annual levy report for the Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District Number 1 for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Strong, second by Councilman Gregory. There's no further discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would move that we approve Resolution 22XXXB, amending and or approving the engineer's annual levy report for the Drainage Maintenance District Number 2008-1 for fiscal year 2022-23.
Go ahead, Joe.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Strong, second by Councilman Hammond. There's no further discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
And Mr. Mayor,
I move that we approve Resolution 22XXXC, ordering the levy collection of assessments with the Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District Number 1 for fiscal year 2022-2023 in accordance with vote as cast.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilman Strong, seconded by Councilwoman Garcia. No further discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Strong.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia.
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Mayor Martin.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve Resolution 22XXXD, ordering the levy and collection of assessments with the Drainage Maintenance District Number 2008-1 for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Strong, seconded by Councilwoman Garcia. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Strong.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia.
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Mayor Martin.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
And Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve Resolution 22XXXE, declaring the results of the property owner protest balloting proceedings within the Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District Number 1 for fiscal year 2022-23 in accordance with that ballot as those votes as cast.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Strong, seconded by Councilwoman Garcia. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Strong.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia.
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Mayor Martin.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 21, public hearing, resolution of formation regarding the renewal of the Paso Robles Tourism Improvement District.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members. Chris Hewitt, Assistant City Manager. This is the third time this item has come before you. And this, if approved this evening, will be the final time this item comes before you for renewal of the Paso Robles Tourism Improvement District. So just a quick recap, on April 19th, the council approved a resolution of intent to renew the district, which was set to expire, I believe, on June 30th. From its initial 5-year term. At your last meeting on May 17th, the council received public comment and a presentation from the TID representatives. And then tonight is the final public hearing, the formal public hearing, and then the recommendation is to approve a resolution that would renew that TID for a 10-year term at a current 2% assessment of lodging receipts, gross lodging receipts. The fiscal impact to the city for this action, I just wanted to highlight, there is no direct cost as there is a component within the management plan that would allow the city to recover, I believe, 2.5% of the assessment to compensate for the administrative work that our administrative services team does on behalf of the TID to collect and remit that assessment. So with that, I will defer back, Mayor, to you and the council for questions. Ms. Stacy Jacobs is here, as well as other representatives from the TID to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Stacy, you want to say anything before we get into questions? Thank you. Council questions from staff? No. No one? Okay. Thank you very much. We will open it for public comment. Anybody like to speak? This is your opportunity. Same rules apply. Good evening.
Dale Guston, 945 Spring Street. Been involved in a lot of things involving tourism in this city, and I don't know any one program that has benefited the city any more than this one. I think you should approve it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Welcome.
Good evening, Mitch Culver, 5060 Vineyard Drive. Councilmen and women and staff, thank you for everything that you guys are doing. I just wanted to drop in on the 2% increase on the timing on it. I've been through a lot of ups and downs in the real estate market, and quite frankly, we're entering another pretty good interesting time in real estate, and this is all caused by inflation, which I'm sure everybody's very familiar with. Every time we've hit inflation that we've had the Fed's trying to curb that by increasing interest rates, which has created, well, a nosedive on the economy. I'm going to submit to you that pushing an additional fee to people coming into the city at this time is probably not a wise choice and a wise decision. Basically, people are going to start feeling the pain at the gas pump. When gas starts hitting, $9, $10 a gallon, they're not going to travel here like before. And putting another 2% on top of it because it's going to get passed along to them is kind of a crippling blow for people. So I would just say the timing is probably not great with that. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no one rise, do we have anyone online?
Yes, sir. Tracy Campo.
Welcome, Tracy.
Good evening. This is Tracy Campbell. I'm Vice President of Community Engagement and Advocacy for Visits Locale. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. Visits Locale, you may know, is the destination marketing and management organization for the entire county of San Luis Obispo. We work very closely with Travel Paso, and tonight would like to provide our full support for the renewal of the Paso Robles Tourism Improvement District for the full 10-year period. We share Travel Paso's mission to strategically market tourism opportunities to Paso Robles, to inspire collaboration, and to champion hospitality for the community to enjoy the rewards of this tourism, both for visitors as well as our own residents. We'd like to talk about, just briefly, Travel Paso and our close work to advance the market, each organization with different roles. We play different roles, but we are stronger working together in that joint mission. Our collaborative partnership benefits Travel Paso by showcasing the destination in high-impact venues that we can do together with the media, with international buyers, in collective research studies, and by jointly and effectively developing creative assets that feature and highlight the Paso Robles destination. A few examples of this work are a recent Visits Locale familiarization activation event with UK-based media and tour operators. In short, we were able to partner with Travel Paso to showcase the destination to the European marketplace. We currently are partnering on a Visits Locale luxury travel forum that occurs this fall that will bring 40 of the top worldwide international buyers to the destination to showcase and activate the region. And lastly, I'd like to share that Travel Paso recently participated in Visits Locale's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Asset Alignment Study that will help inform inclusive marketing objectives and initiatives in the future. Renewing the Tourism Improvement District will ensure sustainable marketing funding for these and future efforts that, again, benefit both resident quality of life and provides essential funding for city services. With that in mind, Visits Locale fully supports the renewal of the Paso Robles Tourism Improvement District renewal for the next 10-year term and respectfully ask the council for a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Do we have anyone else online waiting to speak?
No, sir.
Very good. I will close public comment, bring it back to the council. But first, we had a question or a concern about a 2% increase in fees. Stacy, would you like to talk about that?
Thank you. I'd like to just clarify that this is no increase in fees. This is exactly what is in place now, has been in place for the last 5 years. It's a 2% assessment that's added on to your 10% TOT that you currently collect. So we are not asking for anything different, just asking for the continuation for the next 10 years.
Thank you for that clarification. What's the council's pleasure? Mr. Gregory.
I'd like to make a motion. Sir?
Sorry, I thought we'd have a discussion.
Okay, well,
okay,
go ahead with the motion.
Okay, you want to go ahead and make the motion? Okay. I move that we approve Resolution X22XXX, renewing the Paso Robles Tourism Improvement District and levying a 2% assessment on all lodging businesses within the district beginning July 1st, 2022, as described in the Management District Plan and Resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilwoman Garcia. Discussion, Mr. Strong.
Mr. Mayor, before we get to that, if we could just officially close the public hearing.
I'm sorry,
I know I had to do it
that
twice last time. And
yeah, okay. We will officially close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. as you know, I represent the city and the region in many, many venues because of our many different associations and joint powers agreements that we have where I have to be there for board meetings, et cetera. And I have to stay in a lot of places. And we are a general law city. And when I stay in the cities that are charter cities, they have found so many creative ways to add additional fees in that their rates over and above the base rate on their hotels is far greater than ours, far greater. We are a very inexpensive place to come to in that regard because we are restricted as a general law city from having a lot of these extra things we can just add on. And this is very modest, and we're also very popular. When I started doing this some 15 years ago, I'd say where I was from, and they'd say, well, where's that? And I'd have to explain Hearst Castle, Cal Poly, Madonna Inn, something to relate them to, Monterey. Now I go and I say Paso Robles. Oh, I love Paso Robles. I go back there. They're striving to come here all over the country. We are popular, and when they come here, they use our services. And we better have the money to pay for it. That's why I'm supporting this resolution.
Thank you. Any further comments? So just to be clear, this 2% assessment, correct me if I'm wrong, Stacy, this is not money that comes to the city. This is money that you assess yourselves for marketing services. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. Okay, I'm getting a nodding assent. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Item number 22, approval of a resolution confirming the existence of weeds or noxious growth, creating a potential fire hazard and ordering their abatement. We have to confirm the existence of weeds?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Martin, members of the council. I'm Battalion Chief Randy Harris, here tonight to confirm the presence of weeds or noxious growth on the attached Exhibit A properties and ask for their approval to have them abated. Initial compliance inspections started on May 2nd and continued throughout the week, utilizing a combination of both career and volunteer staff. On May 17th, through Resolution 22-051, 696 lots were declared a public nuisance. Reinspection of the affected parcels occurred starting June 1st. Properties still out of compliance were notified of tonight's public hearing through postings on the property, U.S. mailed to registered APN owners, and the occupant address. I'm happy to report, since the list was submitted for posting, several of the properties have either been abated or called our administration to make arrangements to have them abated sooner than our contractor could get out there. Residents have until our contractor arrives at their property to still perform the abatement work themselves without additional fees. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff? Thank you. Open it for public comment. Anybody would like to speak? This is your opportunity. Seeing no one come forward, anyone online?
No, sir.
I will close public comment, bring it back to the council. Councilman Hammond.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion then to approve Resolution 22XXX, confirming the existence of public nuisances described in Exhibit A and ordering the abatement of weeds or noxious growth to abate the nuisance.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Hammond, second by Councilman Gregory. There's no further discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We come now to item 23. Item 23 is short-term rental ordinance 1082, proposed 2022 amendment, ZC 15-006, amendment to table 21.16.200 and chapter 21.34 of the zoning code regulating short-term rentals in all zoning districts.
Mayor Martin.
Mr. Hammond.
Go ahead, John.
I'd like to go ahead and read a statement, Mr. Mayor, that I will not be participating in this item. I am one of two executors on my mother's trust that owns both long-term and short-term on 16th Street. And because of that, it creates an indirect interest, which causes me to recuse myself from this item. So I'll be departing that.
Thank you. Mr. Gregory.
And I have a direct conflict of interest as I operate some vacation rentals downtown. So I'll be recusing myself for this item.
Very good. The record will show that Councilman Hammond and Gregory have recused themselves on this issue, and they will be leaving the room. My understanding, you will be leaving the room for the rest of the evening?
Yeah, I'll just listen to that.
Steve, is that the case for you also? Okay, so you'll be calling in after this item for the remainder of the agenda?
I may.
Okay, very good. It has an impact on how we vote. So. Okay, very good. So item number 23, can we get a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Warren Frace, Community Development Director. So as you mentioned, this is a hearing to consider an amendment to our short-term rental ordinance. Little background on this, just to remember where we've been on this. The council originally started asking for some direction on short-term rentals back in 2015. We held a standing room only town hall meeting at that time. Based on that, we created what was known as the short-term rental task force. They met 9 times and produced an ordinance that was referred to the Planning Commission and City Council in 2017. That ordinance did not pass. In 2019, we reconvened the short-term rental task force. They met another 8 times and forwarded another revised ordinance for consideration that was adopted by the City Council in 2019, almost 3 years ago. That's Ordinance 1082. Part of that process was annual reviews of the ordinance to determine how it was performing. We've had 2 reviews in 2020 and 2021. Last year at the 2021 review, City Council directed staff to start the process to extend the ordinance. One of the provisions in the ordinance was it had what is known as a sunset clause, where it would automatically expire within 3 years unless the council took additional action to extend it. That's basically what we're considering tonight. We held another public workshop on March 24th to gather more input on this process before we went to Planning Commission. April 26th, the Planning Commission did hold a hearing on a changed revised draft ordinance, and they have a recommendation before you tonight that I'll be going over in a moment. So just a couple key points in terms of the ordinance that's currently in place. As I mentioned, there's the 3-year sunset clause. We have 2 different types of short-term rentals that are described in the ordinance. One is home shares, where the owner agent occupies the home at the same time as the tenant lodger. And then we have the non-hosted, which is more like the vacation home, where it's a house that's no one's in there except for the renter. There is a requirement in the R1 single-family zoning districts that short-term rentals have to be separated by 100 feet. There's a series of parking and occupancy limits in terms of how many people can occupy a unit and how much off-street parking needs to be provided. There's a provision that a short-term rental hotline be operated where comments or concerns from neighbors can be called in and dealt with quickly. There's a provision that permits in the downtown zone, which is the T zone of the uptown specific plan, can be transferred from the current owner to a future buyer. You can't do that outside of the T zones, which is the R1 zones. And then we have a numeric cap in terms of the total number of permits. There's 325 that are allowed. That's actually part of a companion resolution that was adopted in 2019 by the City Council. This isn't actually being discussed tonight. So all we're talking about tonight is the ordinance. We do have this companion resolution that the City Council could consider in the future. That's where the actual cap in terms of the total number of short-term rental permits is contained. So basically, the resolution sets these caps. It also sets penalties and processes for issuing permits, that sort of thing. So the City Council could choose to revisit that at any time. The Planning Commission did provide some additional recommendations when and if the City Council chooses to revisit the resolution. Okay, so on to the recommendations. So in the staff report, there are 2 ordinances. There's an Ordinance A, which is actually going to be staff's recommendation, which is basically a no change to the ordinance, basically leave it as is. And then Ordinance Version B, which is the Planning Commission's recommendation, which incorporates a number of staff's recommendations to the Planning Commission, but they added a couple other features. The reason we really have this A-B is we know this is a difficult issue. We have to have a unanimous vote on this. So we want to make sure that we have the full range of options described for the City Council. as staff was preparing these, we did come to realize that probably the no change ordinance A really is the preferable path. One of the things we heard during the workshop is, although no one, thinks it's a perfect ordinance, I think the general consensus is it's worked very well over the last 3 years. There's always some changes you can make, but the reality is it's working very well, and if we just left it as is, it'll continue to work well. And that may be the easiest path forward, so we want to make sure that's an option for the City Council to consider tonight. So here's a list of the changes. So the first change would be number one, removal of the 3-year sunset clause. So Ordinance A, we just remove it, and there is no sunset clause. The Planning Commission is recommending that you keep the sunset clause, but extend it another 3 years to 2025, which would mean we'd have to do the same process again in 3 years, which staff is not recommending. There's a recommendation that home shares, right now there's an exemption that the home owner can be absent 30 days per calendar year. Ordinance A, that would remain unchanged. Planning Commission recommendation would reduce the 30 days down to 10 days of absence per year. There's a proposal to clarify that accessory dwelling units, which are state mandated, can't be used as short-term rentals. That's state law. That's just in there basically as a clarification. There's no real reason to require it. So we're recommending Ordinance A not to have that change. Ordinance B would just add that as a clarification. Right now, when we issue a new short-term rental permit, there's a requirement to notify any neighbor within 50 feet of the new permit and provide them a good neighbor brochure. With Ordinance A, we would just leave that 50-foot rule as is. Planning Commission is recommending the 50 feet be extended to 300 feet. Based on the 325 permits in town and a 300-foot notice, that is a lot of public noticing and a lot of duplicate effort that would be created by that rule. Number 5 would be just to clarify changes in the municipal code, cross-references to other code sections. Both codes include that change. Originally, so in the T-zone, we listed some of the T-zones by name and other ones we didn't list. So it's a little confusing, but it still works fine. So in Ordinance A, we would just leave that as is. Planning Commission recommendation would be just to clarify by name all of the T-zones. Change number 7 would be to change what zones permits can be transferred to new owners in. Right now, any T-zone, you can transfer permits, which is the T3, the T4, the TC1, and the TC2 zones. So Ordinance A, we would just leave that rule as is. Planning Commission recommendation is that permit transfers would only be allowed in the TC1 and TC2 zones. That means the TC3 and 4 zones, where the majority of the permits are, which are currently transferable, would become untransferable. Staff doesn't believe that that's a necessary change at this point, and probably would be very disruptive to try to enforce. And then changes for how swimming pools are utilized. Ordinance A, we just make no change to that rule. Planning Commission recommendation is limit pool use from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So those are the changes. I'm going to run through really quickly just kind of how this applies throughout the city. So as I mentioned, there's different rules between the R1 and the T zone. The red areas are your R1 zoning districts. This black outlined area around downtown, that's your uptown specific plan zone where the T zones are. Here's just a current list of the different types of permits that we have issued. There's no limit on home share permits. The limited permits are the non-hosted, which are limited at 325. Currently, we have 108 that have been issued in the R1 zone. That's because we grandfathered in certain number of permits, so that's why we're over the 75 limit still. All the other zones, which are primarily the T zones, there's 217 non-hosted for a total of 325. We do have wait lists in these zones since we've exceeded the maximum number of permits. There's about 66 people that are waiting for permits to become available. So as I mentioned, in the R1 zone, originally we were allowed 75 because of grandfathering, and we issued 125. We're now down to 108. We met the cap about a year ago of 325. That's when we started the waiting list. And as I mentioned, we have 66 on the waiting list today. In terms of distribution, we do provide maps of the distribution of the short-term rentals. The majority are on the west side of Highway 101, primarily the R zones to the east side have fewer and better distribution of those units. About 3% of all the single or housing lots in town have short-term rental permits. About 2.5% of those would be the non-hosted. 6% of the homes on the west side do have short-term rental permits. So we do have a higher concentration on the west side. So in terms of the T zones, just for clarification, the T zones are in the uptown zone, inside the black zone. There's 4 different T zones, the TC1, TC2, these are primarily mixed-use commercial zones. The T3 and T4 are more residential zones, but they do allow for flexible mixed uses just of a lower intensity. So that's where the T zones are. One of the requirements of a short-term rental is it has to pay the same TOT, transient occupancy tax, as hotels and RV parks. Right now, 14% of all our collection of TOT is by short-term rentals. You will see on these maps or on these charts, going back to when we started, we've increased significantly in our annual collections. When we started, we were below $200,000 in collections per year. This year, we're very close to $1 million in TOT revenue just on short-term rentals alone. We do contract with a enforcement service called Host Compliance. They do scour the web on a continuous basis, identifying addresses that are being listed for rental. They compare that against our list of issued permits. They provide us monthly reports in terms of properties that may be being rented that are out of compliance. They also provide us a hotline service so that neighbors can call in with any sort of concerns or operational complaints. These services are funded by the short-term rental permit fees that are collected for the permits. There's a dashboard that's provided on the city website that basically is a summary of the information that's provided real-time by Host Compliance. As I mentioned, there's a hotline. This is the number for the hotline. We've received 84 complaints. The majority of those are for noise, and the majority of those are related to 4 single short-term rental properties in town. Most of those have to do with noise related to swimming pool use, which isn't actually a violation of the noise ordinance, and that's why they really don't become enforcement issues, because when investigated, they're actually in compliance, but they do generate a lot of calls. There has been some questions about additional calls being called into the police department beyond that. We're not tracking those separately at this time, so we don't actually we're not able to break those stats out separately. This is an example of the reports that we get. So when calls come into the hotline, they do generate reports that come to city staff that identify the issue, the complaint, the location, and then staff usually follows up with the property owner or the agent to try to bring these things into compliance, which typically, we've been successful in bringing any of these complaints into compliance other than the swimming pool noise. I think one of the issues that we are aware of is that if you're outside of the T zones, change of ownership requires the short-term rental permit basically to be revoked or given back. So we are trying to develop a more proactive process to track changes of ownership. We don't have that in place right now. We will be doing that as part of the renewal process. So all 325 permits need to be renewed within the next 9 months, basically. So we will be vetting out any change of ownership during the process, which will open up additional spots for those on the waiting list. So we're hoping to address some of the concerns with the waiting list as we basically kind of revet the lists. Right now, we've had 8 permit spots on the waiting list open up over the last few months or so. So that gets us back then to staff's recommendation. So as we pointed out, staff's recommendation is different than the Planning Commission's recommendation. We are recommending Ordinance A, which is basically the no change option, and staff would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that report. I want to bring to the attention of the council and the public that because we have 2 recused council members, the 3 council members remaining will hear the issue. And whatever action is taken will have to be unanimous for it to be effective. So that being said, I'll ask council members if they have questions of staff.
The one question I have is on the hours 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. for swimming pools and hot tubs. Do we have a time limits on swimming pools and hot tubs citywide?
No, this would be unique to short-term rentals only.
Oh. I would ask our city attorney, is it legal to do that type of restriction, to restrict some citizens but not others?
You're restricting the commercial enterprise, not the tenants, the residents themselves.
Okay, so would we also then restrict all the hotels the same way?
Yep.
Sorry, one more try with the microphone on. What I said was that, yes, we can do that. It's restricting a commercial enterprise. It is not restricting the resident.
But, and then my question would be, we're restricting commercial enterprise. Is it all commercial enterprises in the same type of business?
We'd be restricting all of the short-term rentals. So
any short-term rental. So it wouldn't matter whether it's a house or a hotel. Thank you.
Other questions?
I just have a question on the, where it says here, increase the 50-foot neighborhood noticing for new permits. Isn't that information already, if someone wanted to just call, it's on the website? You said earlier that there's a map or there's a website. If somebody in the neighborhood didn't get a notice, but they suspect that someone is doing a short-term rental in their neighborhood, that's public notice, right? I mean, they can call and find out.
Yeah, so we don't actually list them by address on the web because there were some security concerns with that, but there are the maps, so you can get a pretty good idea where there are by the maps, and then you can definitely call city staff for verification. So there are ways to determine that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I have a few questions. I'd like to get into a little bit the thinking of the Planning Commission on some of their recommendations. First off, on the sunset clause, what was their reasoning for feeling this was warranted to extend the sunset clause?
You know, I think they appreciated that there's a lot of community concerns about this, and they just wanted to, I think, have the opportunity for the public to continue to weigh in on this important issue. And I think they thought that revisiting it again in 3 years would facilitate additional public input.
So a concern that there hasn't been sufficient input to date?
I think they just were appreciating that more would be better.
Okay. And then on the notice distance, 300 feet, has this posed a problem? Is something, I mean, if we had a lot of protests saying, gee, I should have been told about this, what drives that concern?
We've heard a little bit about that. I think there's some larger lots where certain people that were fairly close may have not have received a notice. It may have been about the 50-foot rule or not. Originally, staff had recommended doubling that. 300 feet is what we use for public hearing notices, and that's a pretty large buffer.
Okay. So if I understand what you said, the original staff recommendation was for a 100-foot notice area, and that got reduced to 50.
Right now, the rule is 50.
Right now, it's
Staff
50.
recommended 100. The Planning Commission increased it to 300.
Gotcha. Okay. Do we have, I'm just trying to kind of get my head around some of the numbers here. Do we have a lot of people who have pulled STR permits that basically aren't using them?
We haven't done a formal analysis of that. We would have to go through and kind of audit the TOT payments. We haven't done that. That is something we're looking into over the next, period of time.
But that action isn't something we would consider tonight as far as auditing and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's really more of the operational, which would be part of the resolution, and that's probably the best time to address that issue.
I had a concern from one constituent who wrote me saying that the dashboard presentation didn't jive with the information presented in the public hearing, that the number of homes, which is 108 in the public hearing stats, showed up as 126 on the dashboard.
Yeah, I think, what's on the dashboard is just raw numbers that host compliance is pulling off the internet. So there's some variation. Sometimes they'll miss things or double count things. So that's just kind of the nature of when you're trying to, pull everything off the internet and interpret it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then tell me a little bit more about the transfers. The transfers that are being discussed are only in the T zones. If I own an STR and just a regular R1 zone, are those transferable also?
No, they are not.
If I'm in an R1 zone, not a T zone, and I own an STR and I want to sell that house, I can't tell a prospective buyer, and oh, by the way, you can use it as an STR.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, and then last but certainly not least, what seems to be a repetitive concern that's voiced on this subject is the issue of swimming pools. Would you say that this represents the majority of complaints about noise, swimming pools?
Yes, the majority of the hotline complaints are related to noise, and the majority of that is related to swimming pool use during the day.
Those are all my questions. Anyone else have others? Thank you. Okay. We're going to open the public hearing. This is your opportunity to speak. We invite you to come forward and share your thoughts with us. The microphone is yours, and the same rules apply. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dan Hurdle. I'm a 20-year owner and resident at 327 15th Street. In 2018, my wife and I took our life savings and built a little 600 square foot Airbnb on our property. We've been living on the property and renting out our little cottage in a mixed-use zone for 3 years now, and are proud to say we've had no complaints and enjoy the support and respect of our neighbors. And in fact, my neighbor Norma took the time to write a letter to City Manager Lewis in support of our little operation. I'm standing before you today in the hope that you will stand up for my family and choose option A, not option B. You see, our little second house is an ADU built before 2020. State law was changed at the beginning of 2020 to disallow new ADUs built after January 1st, 2020 from being used as short-term rentals. This does not apply to our little house. As you can see, our communication with staff, and I had some handouts, our communication with staff on May 7th, 2022 reassures us that the ordinance change will not affect our livelihood. I quote Assistant Planner Wilson, "Yes, this state law only applies to ADUs built after 2020, so it will not affect your permit or your use of your ADU. Quote, this law is already part of the current ordinance. We are just adding language to clarify it," unquote. However, you can clearly see on page 3, item 3, of Ordinance B that the language now added in option B is, quote, ADUs cannot be used as short-term rentals, unquote. You can see the change specifically made also on page 68 of option B, where the language cites state law and then goes further in stating, and I quote, accessory dwelling units cannot be used as short-term rentals, unquote, and quote, state law allows the city to prohibit STR use of all ministerially approved ADUs, unquote. My interpretation of this language is that not just those ADUs that are restricted by state law would be disallowed, but any ADU within the city limits, including the little house that my wife and I have staked our family's future on. My wife and I borrowed heavily to build this little house. Let me be clear, this is my primary income. It is also the best shot I ever have of retiring. I operate it, I clean it, and I am able to bring in income while also being the primary caregiver to our 7-year-old daughter. We are able to pay our house payment because we rent it as an STR. I cannot go back and change my little ADU into something else. Option B, if it were to become an ordinance, I would lose my job and we would no longer have the income to pay our house payment. I'm asking something simple and easy for you to do. Choose option A, please. Option B, as proposed, would have dire consequences for my family. Please help us and choose option A and keep the ordinance as is. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Welcome.
Hi, I'm Ian McMillan, and I had the cabinet shop at 1000 Park Street for years, and we've decided to build on the corner of 10th and Pine, 829 10th Street, and it's a multiple use. Below we have commercial and above apartment, 2 apartments. And the one apartment that I'm concerned about is a little, it's too small, you know, for someone to stay there for a long period of time. And that particular area now, a catty corner from us, is going to be, you know, a big development with over 100 hotel rooms. We're right next to the Chevelle, and they plan to build across the street a couple more. And so we're kind of right in the middle of this residential, or it's not a residential area, it's kind of a hotel area close to downtown. And we're on the list, you know, to get a permit for short-term rental. But because, you know, that these permits are transferred, that list is longer than we have plans for. And so I'm hoping that the planning or the city council would either increase the allotment for permits on that T1 zone, or not even include, you know, a cap on that. Especially since, you know, the hotels are moving in, and it makes it very difficult for us to make the that unit work the way it is.
Thank you, sir. Who would like to go next? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Beth Burke. I live at 1527 Park Street. I wanted to follow up on a couple of comments in my letter I sent to you on the council. Sunset clause, please don't create another 3 years of uncertainty for vacation rental homeowners. I think the existing annual reviews and sunset clause provided due diligence and accomplished their purpose. The members of the Planning Commission who spoke to keeping the sunset clause did not, I don't believe, mention public input. They mentioned that they wanted explicitly to have to be involved in the process. That was their motive for the sunset clause, and I think you have a right to involve them with or without the sunset clause. So please don't create another 3-year possible big change in the lives of people who have vacation rentals. Neighborhood noticing, The 300-foot notice is the city standard for very large projects that impact entire neighborhoods. The Planning Commission's stated rationale was, oh, why not? Let's make it consistent. It's apples and oranges. I really do think a 50-foot noticing parameter is really appropriate. Transferable permits, I don't think it's that you've created an advantage for homes in the T-zones. I think it's that you've respected the demand in the R1 and R2 zones that short-term rentals be phased out or reduced. And lastly, in terms of regulating pool usage, I think you will get significant pushback if you attempt to characterize short-term rentals as commercial enterprise. They are homeowners generating income from renting out their homes, just like someone who rents out on a lease basis. So I think you would get significant pushback. They are not commercial enterprises. They're homeowners generating income with their private homes. I really appreciate that you guys take all these steps. If you move into a position of endorsing portions of Ordinance B, the recommendations from the Planning Commission, they diverge so wildly from the staff recommendations and from the public input at the workshop. I would suggest that an additional workshop would be appropriate for public input. Once you finish your first reading, we're on a train headed to the second reading, and there was no opportunity given for public input after the Planning Commission's recommendations until just now. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hello, Daniel Montoya, 136 Via Camellia. Good evening, Mayor Martin, and good evening, council members. I'm a local, born and raised. I spent the last, even though I spent the last 14 years in Southern California and the last 2 in the high desert of Joshua Tree, I couldn't be happier to be back to my beautiful hometown of Paso Robles. I'm here today to urge you not to increase the amount of short-term vacation rentals within the city of Paso Robles and to adopt Ordinance A. As I mentioned, I spent the last 2 years in the high desert of Joshua Tree, and where I had a front row seat to the adverse effects of STRs can have on a city. Some being loss of community, disruption to peaceful neighborhoods, and in the case of Joshua Tree, a 400% surge in home prices, leaving neighborhoods vulnerable to investors who want to turn a quick profit with no regard to community. Paso Robles has many lodging options. A simple search on travel sites will populate all the new hotels in the area. Additionally, there are several new projects, one of which is just a few blocks from here on Railroad. I want to be clear that I welcome investors to continue revitalizing our town, but please leave our neighborhoods to the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Welcome.
Dale Gustin, 945 Spring Street. Embellishing on a little bit of that history. There was an ordinance passed on a first reading that excluded all vacation rentals from R1. However, when it came up for a second reading, it was not passed the way it was originally worded. And so it went back for more studies and all that. And finally, he tried to install a lot of safeguards to diminish or satisfy the packed audience that was against vacation rentals in the R1. One of the concerns of the council that I understood was the loss of TOT. And as you can see by what was presented tonight, that's a large sum of money. I don't think money should be the only criteria. My concern is you give this to the Planning Commission, they do all the studies, and the first time they recommended none in R1. Now they're making recommendations again that allows it in R1, but puts further safeguards for the public that didn't want them in R1 to begin with. And then, are you going to overrule the Planning Commission again after all their input and their studies and go with Ordinance A instead of Ordinance B? I think you ought to consider the public in this and adopt Ordinance B. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Orly McMillan, I just wanted to add one thing that my husband said, Irv McMillan, Ian, and that is the one that we want to get a short-term license, but we already have it in use as a long-term. It's already being used as a long-term rental. In fact, 2 nights ago, a homeless lady slept in our vacation rentals back of his pickup. So I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, I don't understand why the staff always says no changes recommended, because we would like to see, we're in T1, it's a very tiny area. We're surrounded in hotels, the police station's across from us, who've always been very good to us. And and we're already doing it as a vacation rental, but at long-term, we'd like to do short-term. And since it's so tiny and we're surrounded in, oh my God, 125 catty corner already approved. There's no caps for hotels. T1 is a hotel area. 16 across proposed. Next to us, there's the Chevelle. They have 16. They're going to do 11 across. So I don't understand why staff won't change that, because in the T1, we've been on a waiting list for a year, and we've only moved from 11 to 8, and that's in a year. So I don't see why there is a restriction at all in the T1 for a vacation rental, or if you want to do some restrictions, not have it so hard that you got to wait 5-6 years to get a permit, because a year moving 3 places isn't very long. So my question is, we would like to see the ordinance change for the T1. So that's all I wanted to add. It's already a long-term rental anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm back. Mitch Culver, 5060 Vineyard. Thank you, Mayor and Council and women. And I'm just going to be short and sweet. Ordinance A has been well thought out, and it has been very well represented with the public. I think the public has been back and forth and on Ordinance A over and over and over again. The sunset clause, it's time to just move on. I would back Ordinance A fully. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Or if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Thank you, sir. Right. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak? Seeing no one come forward, anyone online?
Yes, sir. First caller is Michael Larned.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Michael Larned. I live at 1936 Oak Street, and my thing is we live in a block where there is 4 vacation rentals right now, and there's going to be possibly one more. The simple fact of the matter is I'm trying to raise a family here, and it's getting to the point where I want to know what the city's doing to help me, because I have no idea who's moving in every other weekend across the street. Not only that, one of the, actually the one next door is one of the swimming pool ones. And it's not the 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. issue. It's not the afternoon loud swimming pool. It's the 3 a.m. screaming at the top of their lungs, jumping in the swimming pool, that we have to sleep with all of our house closed because we can't get any sleep otherwise. So that's why we're having issues with that. So I just want to know what the city's going to do if they keep if they're going to limit the saturation of this certain area, because we already have 4 on my block alone. I want to know if there's going to be any protection for people that live here. We have owned this house for 10 years, so I want to know what's going to be going on going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else?
Next caller is Dan Jones.
Welcome, Dan.
Yes, this is Dan Jones, 1402 Greenwood Drive. And first of all, thank you for letting me comment on this. I'm a firm believer in sunset reviews. I think that as a veterinarian, my license is under regulation by the California Veterinary Medical Board, which has periodic reviews. They serve a real purpose to not only keep the governing agency, which in this case is the state legislature, informed as to what is going on with the board, but it also allows veterinarians to know and to actually put in their input as to things that they have against or for the board. So it allows public input, and that's what I think is very important. It seems like this has been a very contentious type of an issue going on now for 6-7 years, and I don't think that it is going to go away, as a lot of people would like it to. I think this is something that, as serious as it is and as much effect as it has on our residential neighborhoods, that we should keep the public informed on a periodic basis and keep the council informed as to what's going on. If this is causing staff to have problems, then I would suggest that they increase the permit fees to hire additional staff in order to get these reviews in order. So I would go for ordinance B and allow the sunset to continue.
Thank you.
Next caller is Jan Tornquist.
Welcome, Jan.
I'm interrupting here. There you go.
Hello?
Hello.
Jan?
Yes.
You're up.
Oh, I'm sorry. A little bit of confusion there. Good evening. Thank you. I'm Jan Conquest, and I'm calling because I believe that the commercial district downtown that already has mixed use is in a different situation than the residential areas in town. And I think that specifically the T1 area, if there's people that have rentals that are already existing that they would like to offer as short-term rentals, I think that that's a good move, and I would support that. I would support either raising the cap for the T1 or just eliminating it altogether. I can't see that there's going to be an overflow of folks that are small business people that are going to be down there that would be cause the existing hotels and all the planned hotels any problems. So I think we should make an exception there and allow for the T1 cap to be eliminated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next caller is Andrea Lobsher.
Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you for, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think I've been sharing my thoughts on this issue for, since the first meetings back in 2015. And I just wanted to call in and say that I think staff's recommendation for Ordinance A is the best option. And I do appreciate that they thought about this and put it forward after the Planning Commission meeting. We've been going through this now for years, and it just seems like it's been, working decently the last few years, and it'd be nice to just have something in place that we can have to move forward. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments.
I have no other callers.
We have no other callers. I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the council. We do have a couple of questions if we could possibly address those. There was a question from the gentleman regarding the utilization of ADU for rental. Can you address that, Warren?
Yeah, so the intent is that it would just be the compliance with state law, which is ADUs that were issued after a certain date would be included. Any preceding that date wouldn't be included. I agree that, ordinance B is a little vague in that case. So if we go with that provision, we do want to make it very clear that it's only the state requirement dates that apply.
Okay. Thank you for that.
The second item is the issue of additional TC1 permits. I think that is an issue that's been raised a number of times. It does seem like that is something that should be reviewed when we review the resolution. That's where we actually allocate the permits, and that's the time probably best to address that.
Yeah, so I want to remind folks that, and a couple of people had mentioned the numbers of STR permits, and that's not what we're addressing tonight. That's something to be discussed as part of the resolution that enacts this. These are the items that we're talking about tonight, are the issues that we see in front of us.
Mr. Mayor, can I emphasize a point on that too for those that are concerned? This isn't discretionary by staff, the amount of permits in any zone currently. That's set by resolution by the council, so any change to the cap would have to come back separately. So I understand the frustration by the community,
right.
But it's something that staff cannot control.
So it's not at the staff's discretion to say you can have one more or one less. That's not the way it's set up. It's set up by ordinance, which is enacted by the council after public input, and that's what staff has to follow. So
that's correct.
Question, Mr. Mayor. On that item, on that thing, on that particular, that's not a zoning issue then, is it? So it's really not even within the purview of the Planning Commission to make recommendations, is it?
I'd defer to the city attorney to answer that question.
The caps that are in the resolution, those are your purview.
Those are our purview. Yeah. That's not even the Planning Commission concern.
So there were a couple of comments about limiting or not limiting saturation. I know that we have some limits on that right now. Perhaps you could elucidate more.
Yeah, so you've got kind of two strategies on that. So in the R1 zones, you have both the cap and you have a separation requirement. In the T zones, you don't have a separation requirement, but you do have the cap. So those were the two strategies employed to try to limit overconcentration and neighborhood impacts.
Right. And then there was a concern by one speaker about not knowing when the next vacation rental would open next door. My understanding is we've reached our caps and we wouldn't expect any new ones at this point, would we?
As of today, there wouldn't be any more until some additional spots on the waiting list open up.
So anybody that, I just want to make sure that I'm clear and the public's clear. In my neighborhood, right now, I live in an R1 neighborhood. At this point in time, today, I don't have to worry about an STR opening next door to me because the caps have been filled.
In the R1 zone, that's true.
Yes.
In the T zone,
in the TC, that's different. Yeah.
The waiting list, a spot could open up tomorrow.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Lewis.
One last point of clarification, we still do allow home shares. So somebody could have a home share open up next to them.
Which is a different animal, but may not seem that way from the public's perspective.
Correct.
Exactly. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could follow up one more item on the ADU issue.
Yes.
So state law is pretty clear about ADUs, where they're allowed, where they're not, and what you can do with them. It would be the city attorney's office's recommendation that you not put that into this ordinance. If we want to talk about ADUs, it's appropriate to do it in our ADU ordinance, but it is really an area that's occupied by state law.
So as of tonight, our action would not affect this gentleman's operation of his ADU as a rental?
If you went with ordinance A, it would not. If you went with ordinance B, we'd have to look at it. But our recommendation would be, at least as it restricts or as it relates to the ADU item, that you go with ordinance A.
Thank you. Council discussion. Mr. Strong.
Well, I'm concerned whenever we try to put like hours on something that apply to citizens. And even our visitors are still citizens. They're American citizens. They come under the same constitution we do. They come under the same rights and expectations we do. And if we put hours in, I want to see them in everything in that zone. So if we're going to do it in R1, then fine. All R1 zones are restricted to those hours, period. I don't think the issue is really swimming pools and hot tubs. The issue is noise. And every issue with the swimming pool is noise related. And if it's noise, we have a noise ordinance. And frankly, I've been called out on 2 occasions to different places saying, oh, the noise is so noisy. It's terrible. You've got to come and do something about it. I've actually taken my decibel meter over there and they were in compliance. These people's ears were very sensitive. They didn't like noise. But the actual noise being created at their property line was legal. And that's a problem, because it's perception sometimes that drives complaints rather than reality. And if we're going to deal with reality, let's deal with reality. And that's why I'm going to support Ordinance A. It's working. And I think Ordinance B is going into areas that aren't even covered in the ordinance. They should be in the resolution. So it went way too far in too many ways.
Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, sir. My only concern is on the 50 feet. If we could, I would like to see that changed to 100 feet. But everything else, I seem to agree with the staff recommendations with Ordinance A. We have had several discussions about this, and I do believe that there's been several researches and workshops and public hearings that I agree with the staff recommendation, except for the increase if you're.
Thank you. So I just want to make one point respectfully. I realize these are houses and we want to treat them as residences, but technically they are businesses.
Right.
I mean, our city attorney previously said the only reason we have authority to regulate these operations is because they are commercial operations. Yes, they're our citizens renting their houses, but they are commercial operations. So I just want to be honest and open about that. That's what we're talking about here. And it's kind of a different animal than if we were, trying to put restrictions on the people living in their R1 homes and their swimming pools and whatnot. We have different rules for businesses downtown than we have for people where they live in their homes. It's because they're commercial operations. The other thing is, I would like to dissuade people from any idea that we've ignored the wishes of our citizens in deference to receiving huge sums of TOT. We did receive almost $1 million, which is great for the citizens of Paso Robles because it helps pay for street repair, it helps pay for policemen. But the fact of the matter is, if we were in this for the money, there would be no caps on STRs. We just say, keep renting those houses out because we love that TOT. So I just don't feel that the statement that we are not serving the public in this issue is accurate or warranted. We are considering the public. We've had so many public hearings. We continue to receive input from people in the public. We've received input tonight and continue to try to balance the rights of everybody involved. And often in a way that does not maximize the monetary return to our city, which I think is right. There is more than one issue to be discussed here. There's more than just money to be talked about here. So we are considering our public when we do this. I'm pretty much in favor of Ordinance A. I would consider expanding from 50 feet to 100 feet. I think that's appropriate. Kind of on the fence about the swimming pool thing because, as Warren said, the great majority of our reports is swimming pool noise. And it seems for a commercial operation, if that takes problems off the table, that would be a kind of a small price to pay to say, you got to close it down by 10 p.m. But I'm open to discussion about that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, could I point out that if we're going to talk about it being commercial because they're renting them out, then so is every rental unit in the city is commercial and not residential.
True.
So every renter is part of a commercial operation. So it would apply to all the R1 and every renter's house. But if it really applies to most of the homeowners too, because they don't really own their home, the bank does. So it's a commercial enterprise for the bank. And therefore, all homes in the city are commercial enterprises of one sort or another, and for the real estate industry. So I think we have to look at it as residents. These are people who are living there, they're just living there for a short time. And I would prefer to continue to look at it that way and deal with it as a noise element and not as a commercial enterprise situation.
So you convinced me when you said all rentals. That rang a bell with me. You oversold it with the banks owning money. I'm sorry. That's their commercial operation.
That's their commercial operation, not yours.
The only thing I was going to comment on that was when you go to a hotel, I mean, what time do they stop the swimming pool when you go to a hotel?
But isn't that a hotel policy? The city doesn't regulate hotels.
Not a city resident. Right. That's their resident. Same thing with a renter. Renter can't use their house in a way that the landlord says they can't. Okay? Nor can a person who buys a house use their house for a commercial enterprise if they have a mortgage on it that says it's for a rental, for residential purposes.
So what I'm hearing here, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're looking at ordinance A with extending the notification to 100 feet.
I'll go.
Do I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I will move that we approve ordinance A with an amendment to change the notification from 50 feet to 100 feet.
I'll second that.
A motion by Councilman Strong, seconded by Councilwoman Garcia. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Strong.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia.
Aye.
Mayor Martin.
Aye. The motion passes 3-0. Thank you very much. Do we have Councilman Gregory online or Councilman Hammond? Have they signed in?
Not at this time, sir.
Okay, so we are still a council of 3, and if I understand correctly, we have to be 3-0 on any further action? Yeah, okay. So we move on now. We are going, if I can find my place in my agenda. We will going to item number 24, discussion item approval of amendment to agreement with Tartaglia Engineering for a scope of continuing services for next phase of the FAA Spaceport license application process. Mr. Sloan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Paul Sloan, Economic Development Manager for the city. We're here this evening to provide you with an update and next steps on the Spaceport license application process. As you may recall, the city retained the professional services of Tartaglia Engineering to perform a preliminary technical review. And that the results of that review found that establishing commercial spaceport operation at the Paso Robles Airport is feasible. And those results were presented to council in March. At that time, council.
Just a moment. Mr. Sloan, let's wait till Mr. Strong resumes his seat.
At that time, council instructed staff to come back with a budget proposal for the next steps, what we're calling phase 2. And that is what we are here before you with this evening. Real quick, just an update on the commercial spaceport sector. Last month in March, about 3 weeks ago, the FAA issued a commercial spaceport license for the Huntsville International Airport in Huntsville, Alabama, which makes them now the 14th commercial spaceport in the U.S. So we have 14 commercial spaceports as of last month, but still only one, as you can see on that map, on the entire West Coast, which is down in the Mojave. The proposal that is in your staff report packets this evening, sorry for all the words, I'll just read through it. Tartaglia Engineering has outlined the following proposed activities as part of the next phase of the spaceport license application process. Conduct detailed investigation and evaluation of potential airspace corridors, establish potential route from Spaceport to the designated offshore airspace labeled Whiskey 532, liaise with National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Chumash tribe on marine sanctuary process for securing operational route authority. Meet with Point Mugu, Oakland Air Route Traffic Control Center, and other authorities. Coordinate the findings with Regional Department of Defense airspace stakeholders. Research conceptual launch platforms and obtain performance specifications. Define on-airport space areas and facility needs. Provide concept layout on the airport layout plan, and commence preparation of a preliminary spaceport plan of operation. Each of these points is outlined in much greater detail in the staff report in your packet, along with specific deliverables for each of these points. Each of these points is considered essential in continuing the forward progress of the spaceport licensing project, and the budget for this proposed next phase is not to exceed $114,000 out of general fund reserves. We have with us this evening Mr. John Smith from Tartaglia Engineering, who is prepared to answer any questions you may have on any of these points.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, you want to say something before we get going here? Okay. Council questions? Okay, so Paul, give me an overview here. How are we on this process? We started off on a concept, we've moved to an idea, and now we're moving into the real world. Where are we?
So start exactly that. And the preliminary technical review, which was conducted by Total Engineering, determined that it's doable, the word they used in their executive summary. And that got us to a plateau of great, now how do we get from here to there? So this next phase, as you can see, dives into the details of that. We saw in the presentation in March where they found a launch corridor to get them out 12 miles offshore, which is essentially 40 miles from here and 10 miles up, higher than all commercial air traffic, which is be the route to space by a horizontal launch platform using our airport. And now we're looking at sort of the details of that. We talked about the discussions, for example, with the marine sanctuaries, military bases to the north, and the Monterey Marine Sanctuary, Chumash Tribe working on one to the south. Obviously, all of the conversations with Oakland and Point Mugu. So now it's really getting into the sort of the nuts and bolts, fleshing out what was presented to us, and seeing this is proposed to be about a 90-day, a 3-month phase 2, which will really tell us where we are as we move forward into getting into the meat of the application process.
So we're obviously moving into the real world on this conversation. How nuts do other people think we are?
Sorry, what?
I said, we're obviously moving into the real world on this conversation. How nuts do other people think we are?
Going to space is crazy. I mean, who wants to do that in the first place? All I know is that we've experienced over the past year or so the number of people that are coming to us. We've now had not just companies here in the U.S., but we now have multiple companies, international companies, interested in having a U.S. footprint here in what we're developing. Because as we talk about, this is specific to Spaceport, but the Spaceport and Tech Corridor are the 2 parallel paths that we're working on. And the Tech Corridor has those multiple developments, such as the landing, Paso Commons, and other areas that have yet to be named. And that's where we have land, we have developers working on those projects. So that's moving forward. And the missing piece, as we're putting this puzzle together, was the funding. And just in the last week, we've had conversations with 2 venture capitalist firms, one in Southern California and one in Silicon Valley, both of which have now asked for second meetings, coming up with funds so that it's coming to us. People that know what they're doing, hopefully, see the potential of what we're trying to do. So if we're just standing back, waiting for the door to be slammed in our face, that hasn't happened yet. The doors sort of keep opening.
So we have received letters of interest from companies and from other organizations.
We have a letter of intent signed with Cal Poly, the president of Cal Poly himself. We have received a letter of intent signed by a space plane company based out of Florida, Wagner Enterprises. And we have a letter of intent signed by a company which makes propulsion systems for small satellites, Stellar Explorations, to relocate and expand their base of operation here. And Stellar Explorations is an engineering firm that, as I said, makes little propulsion systems for small sats. They're actually part of the project called Capstone by NASA, which is sending something to the moon right now as we speak. So they do stuff with NASA and the Department of Defense now. And they're people who want to come here, be in our tech corridor, and be part of developing this Central Coast space economy.
Thank you. Any questions before I open this up? Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate it. We'll open to the public for comment on this. This is your opportunity. We invite you to come forward and take the microphone.
And Mayor Martin, just so you have an awareness, Councilmember Gregory has joined the meeting remotely.
Thank you. For those watching in, Councilman Gregory has rejoined the meeting and he is attending remotely from his home. Welcome.
Mayor, City Council, and members of the public, I'm totally in support of this. I hope you go after this in the best way you possibly can. It looks like you have a lot of interest. As I mentioned previously, my last meeting regarding this, Vandenberg has become a commercial space center. Elon Musk has done incredible things there. I think this could be a real boon for upwardly mobile employment opportunities for our people. I would hope that you would pursue this, and if we do get this designation, that you would start to show the opportunities to our students in our local schools so that they can see that they can have upwardly mobile opportunities here and raise their children here and have a life here. That's not the case, as we all know right now. So I'm totally in favor of this. I certainly hope that we're successful. And I know with the staff pushing hard on this, and this gentleman working as hard as he has, as I've seen, he's done very good in his presentations. I hope that we see this come to fruition and it becomes a real positive for this city. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no one rise online?
No, sir.
We have no one online. We'll close the public comment, bring it back to the council for discussion and action. Lady and gentlemen.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you want to make a motion? Or?
Sure, I'll make a
Go
motion.
ahead.
I would like to make a motion to approve resolutions 22XXX, authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement amendment with the Taltelgia Engineering not to exceed $114,000 for Phase 2 Spaceport licensing work.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Garcia, seconded by Councilman Strong. If there's no further discussion, and we have Councilman Gregory online, so if you do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Item number 25, state mandated drought response level 2 water demand reduction measures. Mr. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Martin, members of the council. I'm Kirk Gonzalez, your water resources manager, and I'm providing a presentation this evening to give you an update on recently adopted emergency regulations, the status of the city's water supplies and demands, and to recommend the city implement demand reduction measures to comply with the state's recent mandate. At your April 19th City Council meeting, our Public Works Director provided an update on anticipated state action pertaining to conservation requirements that were proposed to be implemented in response to statewide drought conditions. On May 24th, the State Water Resources Control Board adopted drought emergency regulations requiring public suppliers like the City of Paso Robles to implement demand reduction measures in response to continuing water shortages throughout the state of California. And the drought reduction measures are those that would correspond to a 20% shortage locally. The adopted regulation also prohibits watering of non-functional turf at commercial, industrial, and institutional properties. And the state is also requiring suppliers to assess water demands and supplies and monitor and report community water use to the state over the next 12 months. So this evening, staff is recommending that the City Council implement level 2 demand reduction measures described in the city's adopted water shortage contingency plan to comply with the state's mandates. But before the City Council's action this evening, I'd like to provide a brief update on our latest assessment of water demands and supplies and summarize the demand reduction measures that would be implemented in response to the state's requirements. Whoop, I'm sorry. Looks like Warren might have been covering me here. So, thank you, Warren, you were right on. So the plot here on this slide shows the city's total water demands from 2019 through May 2022 on a monthly basis. And as you can see, the demands over the past 3 years have remained relatively consistent, especially during the summer season, which is when we typically see the highest. We've assessed our recent historical demands, and we've also taken a look at the projected future demands that may occur according to a state prescribed methodology that requires us to take into account water connections that may occur in the coming near term over a 12-month period. And with this approach, we're projecting that without any demand reduction measures, our water demands could be increasing in the coming months between 5 and 10%. So, during the summer, our demands may reach 7.9 million gallons per day here, July, August timeframe. Professionally, my estimation, I think that that's sufficiently conservative. I think that it's unlikely that we'll reach that high of water demand over our summer period, but that's according to a state prescribed methodology. And relative to those demands, our current production capacity well exceeds that amount. We're currently able to produce about 13 to 14 million gallons per day. So we've got much more water available. than the demands we're projecting. Also, our surface water and groundwater supplies are in good shape, and Lake Nacimiento, as many of you may know, is still at around 25% of total storage, which corresponds to about 94,400 acre feet storage. Additionally, our long-term supplies and our demand projections, which we've documented in our recent urban water management plan, confirm that our supplies are sufficient to serve our projected future plans. So, getting into what level 2 would look like, although we don't really project, we're not projecting any real shortage here for the city, near term or long term, the state is requiring us to implement these level 2 demand reduction measures according to our water shortage contingency plan. And what that means for our customers is they'd have to comply with the 3-day per week watering schedule for landscaping. They wouldn't be allowed to water during a rain event or during the 48 hours following a rain event. Watering is only allowed before 9 a.m. or after 7 p.m., so prohibited between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. Customers are required to repair leaks within 5 days of notification from the city. And we'd also require customers to continue to abide by our minimum mandatory water conservation measures. So those include prohibiting excessive water waste and water running down gutters and such, requirements to use a self-closing nozzle when you're washing your car, washing down hardscapes, and the sorts of requirements that are constantly in place. So in terms of additional requirements beyond those level 2 requirements that the state is asking for, the state also included a ban of non-functional irrigation of non-functional turf on commercial, industrial, and institutional properties with potable water. So this ban, it doesn't apply to any residential landscaping. It doesn't apply to turf at recreational facilities, school fields, or areas that are regularly used for community activities. And water suppliers, the state's fairly clear on this, water suppliers are required to notify our customers of this ban, and we can enforce the ban if we choose. However, since we do not actually have or project to have a water supply shortage, and we don't currently have staff available to enforce this part of the regulation, we're not really prepared to enforce it. And I'm not recommending that we enforce that measure at this time on behalf of the state. Let's see here. Okay, so in conclusion, I'm recommending that we implement the city's level 2 demand reduction measures in order to comply with state's requirements. And I do want to be clear that with this drafted resolution that's included in your packets, the City Council will not be declaring any water shortage condition under our water shortage contingency plan, but only requiring the implementation of the demand measures corresponding to a 20% shortage. With Council's action, staff would alert the public regarding measures put in place by the city via our website, social media outlets, press releases, bill inserts, and such. And we'll continue to monitor our community's water use, water supply availability, any changes to the state's regulations, and update you on those. And depending on the community's response and the needs for enforcement throughout our community, we may seek to bring on part-time staff to help us with enforcement and other conservation activities. So with that, I'm concluding the staff report this evening to you, and if you have questions, I can answer.
Thank you. Just questions of staff, and because Mr. Gregory is not here. Steve, do you have a question?
I just have one question. It's a statistical question. So it's been a few years since we had these restrictions before, and we're using about the same amount of water with more residents. Is that considered in your statistics?
Yes, it is. That is accounted for, Mr. Gregory. And that is an accurate finding. Despite growth in our community, we are still seeing water use stay fairly consistent over the past 3 years.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Strong.
And just to really emphasize, we are not choosing to do this. We are doing this because Big Brother has told us we have to do it, correct?
Yes, I agree with that.
All right. Is it true, I think I've heard, that the water in Lake Nacimiento is about the same amount as 4 Lopez Lakes?
I can't say that sounds about right to me. It may be larger.
I'm getting thumbs up from the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Confirmation from the back.
Okay. So, and that serves all of South County. So we have 4 times as much right here for us as all of South County has. So, I think a lot of our residents don't understand that we're not the ones with the problem. Now, my other question is there any way we can bill the state for the costs they're imposing on our people to maintain our system that produces that much water when they're not allowing us to use it and sell it?
No, I'm not aware of any measures or.
Ask the city attorney, can we send the state an invoice?
You can absolutely send it.
Yeah, we can send it.
You can send it.
Any other questions, Councilwoman Garcia?
No, sir.
Okay, so again, this is a sore spot, you know, with our folks, because they hear state mandate and they go, oh, we're out of water, and we're not. And this is the same situation we were in the last time the state mandated reductions, because one size fits all as far as the state is concerned. My question is, are we planning to do any of the things we've done in the past to help citizens reduce water usage, landscaping allocations, reimbursements, low flow equipment, things like that? Or is that something that's not on the horizon here?
So we do still have those programs in place. We haven't been able to keep those programs active on account of staff shortages recently. My hope is that we will be bringing on new staff that can assist with that here in the coming months, and we'll be able to start our landscape rebate program.
The reason I asked the question is I got asked that on the radio today, is the landscaping reimbursement program still in place? And honestly, I couldn't answer, I didn't know. So the programs are in place, the people to run them kind of at a premium right now.
That's correct. We still have funding for those in our
Should people call, signal that they're interested in taking advantage of these programs?
Yeah, that would be a good idea. They could certainly reach out to us via phone or email, and we do keep on our website, prcity.com/conservation will get you there, information as to the availability of those. So as soon as those are available, information will be posted.
And then as far as reporting out to the state, do we have to send additional reports to the state saying we've saved this much water, or how do they figure out whether or not we're complying or not?
So we do report on a monthly basis normally, and during these times we'll usually they'll have additional fields and information on our conservation activities and how much we're consistent.
And if we don't achieve this 20% reduction, what are the ramifications?
At this time, the state hasn't indicated that they're going to be putting in place any fines to water suppliers for not achieving conservation targets. What they are requiring at this time is only that we put in place these 2 measures.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So that's unlike past years.
That's different from last time. Any other questions? Thank you very much. We'll open to the public for comment. This is your opportunity. Water is important. No one rising to the occasion. Anybody online?
No, sir.
I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Strong.
If I may, with a club over our head, I would move that we approve Resolution 22XXX, implementing Level 2 demand reduction measures according to the city's water shortage contingency plan.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilman Strong, second by Councilwoman Garcia. If there's no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Measure passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Item number 26, our city manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Not a lot to report this council meeting since our last budget hearing. However, I did have a chance to attend the wine festival that the Wine Country Alliance put together for us, and it was in its new location at the fairgrounds. And what a great event that was. So kudos to one of our community partners. Followed that up with, there is a theme here, by the way, going to the beer festival last weekend, which was also on hiatus for a couple of years, and many improvements there. And it was nice to see a lot of smiling faces. And then we'll follow that up this Thursday with concerts in the park, which is another great event that's coming up. So lots of events going on in the community, lots of smiling faces, partnerships with a lot of our hardworking community members. So just kudos to the community.
Thank you, sir. Council Business Committee reports. Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, thank you, sir. I participated in some interviews for our senior center. We had some people that applied. We got to interview them and got to know some new people in our area. I also participated in interviews for the Parks and Rec Department. I just want to emphasize again that I am so grateful for people in our community to step up and volunteer for our committees. And I think that's all I have, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Councilman Strong.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And of course, I was there on those interviews as well. But in addition to our regular council business, I think I made a mistake not applying for the position of city manager. So I didn't get to go to any wine festivals or beer festivals. All I do is attend meetings. So
well, we gotta change that.
So this week I will be in policy committee meetings for the state of California on revenue, on housing, community, and economic development. No, pardon me. I'm not on that one anymore. Revenue and taxation, and also on public safety. And we will be discussing a number of items there. I'm going to be most active in the public safety one this time. And then next week I will be gone for 5 days to Columbus, Ohio, where I will chair the national meeting on transportation policy for all the regional governments of the United States. And we will be taking action on that, recommendations to the federal government again, once more, on how to get more money down to us. So keep our roads and our highways and everything and bridges in proper shape and our new things going. And so we'll work on that. Those are mostly what I'm doing. I will be attending the Library Board of Trustees meeting also this Thursday.
Very good. Thank you. Councilman Gregory.
Yes, I too participated in recruiting some more volunteers for our community, and we do really appreciate all of you. I also like to say we had a really good meeting on Monday evening last week, and it was a budget, or Monday or Tuesday meeting. I can't remember which day it was, but the budget meeting that was presented by staff was very, very completely done with full disclosure, easy to follow. And I just want to say thanks again to the staff for presenting such a digestible report in such a large amount of numbers that we're dealing with. I think it's really nice that we have the capability with our staff to present it that way. So I wanted to say thank you there. And then I can attest that Ty did behave himself at the beer festival. That's all.
You were assigned to keep track of him, were you?
I was in uniform, yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for my extracurricular activities here, I attended the library book sale, which was nice to see back again. And a lot of people attended with me, and I think did pretty well on that book sale. I attended multiple meetings of the Homeless Services Oversight Committee, the General Committee meeting, and subcommittees for Housing and Finance. Attended the Paso Robles Police Department open house presentation, which was done very nicely. Thank you for that. The Supplemental Sales Tax Committee meeting, also the SLOCAL Advisory Committee meeting, which is the county's version of the Tourism Committee. I attended the monthly mayor's meeting and had the opportunity to celebrate with the people of Creston in opening their new Creston Community Center. It's the former firehouse out there, and they've worked for a long, long time to get it open, and it was a lot of fun to be out there and be a part of that. Attended the Chamber of Commerce's Wake Up Paso presentation, along with the rest of the council. Attended the groundbreaking for the Olson Chandler project. We had a meeting with some city staffers and people from the REACH organization and Congressman Panetta here in Paso Robles. Had the opportunity to once again put in front of him our highway needs, and he's very well versed now in the city of Paso Robles and the things we're trying to accomplish, including Spaceport. That was a very gratifying meeting. Attended the Paso Robles Atascadero broadband meeting. We're planning the next steps forward. As you'll remember, Paso Robles and Atascadero are going together to devise a North County broadband strategy to make that project shovel ready so we can qualify for funding to increase broadband access in northern San Luis Obispo County. Met with our Economic Development Manager Paul Sloan with a couple of companies who have expressed interest in moving here since they've heard about our plans to develop a tech corridor and a spaceport. That was very gratifying. Also, I was in one meeting with one of the venture capital companies, and that's very exciting because these are folks that make a living making successful investments, and they've done their homework around here, and they see the opportunity in Paso Robles, and they're very motivated to be a part of it. Attended the Quest College President's Luncheon, and today I was on KPRL's Sound Off program. So those are some of the activities I've been involved in. Upcoming events, Library Board meeting is Thursday, June 9th at 9 a.m. Senior Citizen Advisory Commission meeting is Monday, June 13th, 1:30 p.m. Development Review Committee meeting, Monday, June 13th, 3:30 p.m. Parks and Recreation Advisory, that'll be Monday, June 13th, 4 p.m. Planning Commission meeting is Tuesday, June 14th, 6:30 p.m. Development Review Committee meets again on Monday, June 20th at 3:30 p.m. And our next City Council meeting will be Tuesday, June the 21st at 6:30 p.m. The deadline for submitting items for the regular meeting on Tuesday, June 21st is Wednesday, June the 8th. So I hope you all voted today. I want to thank you all for being here physically and virtually and for all the work you've done. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Councilman Strong, seconded by Councilwoman Garcia. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.